I want to go over two more ways to bring audio into Audition. They're called append and insert. And in many ways, they're like the open command in that the open command brings a link here and then does something with the file, opens it up inside the editor. The append command takes a file and adds it to a file that's already in the editor. It doesn't add it to the files panel, but does add it to the file in the editor. And the insert command brings a file into the files panel and inserts it into an existing multi-track session. So to show you how that works, we need to open up a multi-track session first. Now, I'm going to double click here to do the shortcut to open up the import dialog box, but since there are no files here at the beginning, when I double click it, it won't be the import file dialog box, it'll be the open file dialog box, because the first time you bring something in, it does open it. So double click, there's the open file dialog box. We're going to go to the multi-track sessions folder and double click on 04, 02, etc. That opens it up and also opens up all the files associated with that multi-track session. And now let's bring in one more file so we can do the append command with that one. So now I'm going to double click, and this time it will open up the import file dialog box. Just so you know that's why that happens. I go to the demo files and open up the organ chords file. Okay, now we're ready to go. First of all, I want to work with the organ chords file. Now, this file is a 48,000 sample file, 48,000 samples per second. The file I'm going to bring in is a 44,100 sample file. It's going to automatically up convert to 48,000, just to be aware of that. You won't be able to see that it's 44.1 inside the dialog box, but believe me, it is. And if we were using the media browser, you would be able to see that it's 44.1, but here you can't. But we'll talk about the media browser in another tutorial. So now I want to open this guy up, first of all. Now it's open inside the editor because I double clicked on it. And now I want to append a file to the end of this. That's the append command. To do that, I go File, Open Append. Now, you can say to New, which is basically like opening a file. It's hardly any different than just opening a file straight. But in this case, we want to go to Open Append to the current file. And what that's going to do is going to bring a file and stick it at the end of this. So I go to Current, and then I'm going to select the second organ file, the organ octaves file. That's going to add it right after this one, despite the fact that it's 44.1 and that's 48,000. It adds it right to it and turns it into a 48,000 file. And notice, it doesn't add a file over here. It just puts an asterisk after the one we put in originally. The asterisk means you've changed it. Just be aware you've changed it. So if you save it, you're going to be saving it and it's going to be different. Just be aware of that. So if I were to save this now, it would replace the file that's inside the folder. Well, we're not going to do that. But you can see that we appended the file to it afterwards. That's what the append command does. And put little dotted lines there to say, look, here's the thing you added to it right there. You appended the file. Now let's go to the insert command. And to do that, we go to the multi-track session by double-clicking on this multi-track session icon there. It opens up the multi-track session. There you go. And we have 5 files inside the multi-track session from one of our music sessions. Now I want to add, let's say, some number more to that. You can do that in a very straightforward way. You don't have to, let's say, import and then drag them over. You can put them directly inside the multi-track session using the insert command. So the way insert works is that wherever the current time indicator is located, the files will start there. So if I move it over here, for example, when the files come in, they'll start where the current time indicator is, which is no big deal. It's often just drag them over, but it's best to have this thing at the beginning. So I drag it back to the beginning. And then it'll put the files on whatever track is active. Now, if I have this track be active, you can tell it's active because it's light gray and I've clicked on it. It won't cover it up. It'll see that it's active and that there's a file there. So instead of putting it on this track, it'll put it down in track 6 and then beyond. So there are only 6 tracks here plus a master track, but we're going to bring in more than one file and see what happens when we do that. So we're going to select the track that has something on it just to make sure that you'll see that it doesn't do something bad to that track. Then we'll see what happens if you bring in more than one file because there's only one track that's open here. So to do that, we go to the multi-track menu, not the file menu, but we're working in a multi-track session. So multi-track, insert files. Now, if I didn't have a multi-track session active, let's say I was working on another file, the multi-track insert would be grayed out. It won't be active because you don't have a multi-track session active. So we'll go back to the multi-track session. I'll go multi-track, insert files. Notice the 3 dots there, meaning that something is going to happen after this. Don't worry about it. Nothing bad is going to happen right away. You have another choice here, another thing to do, another option. Click that, and then here's the import file dialog box. Oh my gosh, it's the import file dialog box. Well, we are importing it, but at the same time, we're also inserting it. So I'm going to go back to the working files, music, down to just too hard to find. Now I'm going to select these 5 backing vocal tracks, they're called. I'm selecting them all by clicking on the first one and shift clicking on the fifth one, and I click open. And what happens? It does not cover up the selected track that we had selected before. It adds them down to the bottom, inserts it above that one that was selected, but doesn't cover it up. And then when it runs out of those guys, it adds it first to the sixth and then inserts ones above it. The numbering system gets a little wacky here. It puts track 7 up here in the middle. But nevertheless, it adds 5 new tracks for those 5 new files and does not delete anything that was already there. So we now have 10 tracks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Finally, what happens if you take your current time indicator after all of the clips in a multi-track session? And let's say select this track, and now we want to add a couple of files. If I go multi-track, insert files, let's say we pick these 2 baritone files like that and click open, it's going to add them right here after this guy. Notice how that worked? So that's how I use the append and insert command to bring audio files into Audition.